Important note: this is timeless and powerful wisdom that has influenced and improved the life of millions. Now that you have attracted it to your awareness, you must install it deep into your subconscious mind to experience a real change. Read the description below this video and choose the links among multiple options that will aid you in achieving the optimum results you seek. The journey to success is just one decision away. Thank you for listening and subscribing to Top Mindset Growth Channel.
This is the truth about why most people stay poor. Most people will live and die in chains and never once realize they held the key in their own hands. Poverty is not a lack of money. It is a lack of awareness, a blindness of the spirit, a prison built from thoughts of limitation and fear. The tragedy is not that men and women are born into humble conditions, but that they accept those conditions as permanent, as if fate itself carved the word poverty into their foreheads. They walk through life with bowed heads, never daring to look up and see the infinite sky above them, never daring to imagine that their birthright is abundance. The truth is simple, yet it shatters the illusions of mediocrity. Most people stay poor because they have never learned to master the greatest power known to man, the power of their own mind. Think of Thomas Edison, who was told he was too stupid to learn anything. Imagine if he had accepted those words as truth. The world would still be in darkness. Think of Henry Ford, who went bankrupt multiple times before he built his empire of industry. Imagine if he had believed the whispers of failure that told him to give up. Think of Helen Keller, blind and deaf, yet a voice of wisdom to millions. Imagine if she had said, "I cannot, therefore I will not." What separates the wealthy, the powerful, the world changers from the masses who struggle and remain trapped? It is not luck. It is not family inheritance. It is not privilege alone. It is a certain way of thinking, a clarity of purpose, a refusal to accept the limits that society tries to press upon them. Poverty is not primarily about dollars and cents. It is a vibration, a state of consciousness. The poor broadcast thoughts of scarcity, fear, and doubt. They speak words like, "I can't," "It's too risky," "That's impossible." They carry within them a mental blueprint that repels wealth, and like a magnet, they attract the very conditions they most fear. Meanwhile, the rich are not necessarily smarter, nor always more virtuous, but they vibrate on a higher frequency. They live in a state of expectation, of confidence, of certainty that life will yield to their demands. Andrew Carnegie once said, "Any idea that is held in the mind, emphasized, feared, or revered, will begin at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate physical forms available." He knew, as few did, that riches begin not in the bank, but in the imagination. But most people will never learn this. Most people will work jobs they despise under bosses they resent, earning just enough to pay for their survival. They will complain about the system, about the government, about their unlucky breaks. Yet they will never stop to examine the root, the beliefs that govern their minds. Picture the farmer. He plants seeds of corn in the soil. He does not expect wheat to grow. He knows the soil is neutral. It will yield whatever is planted, whether poison or nourishment. Your mind is that soil. Most men sow seeds of doubt, fear, resentment, and envy. Then they are astonished when their harvest is filled with misery and lack. But the man who sows seeds of faith, vision, discipline, and gratitude will inevitably reap a harvest of abundance. The soil does not choose, it only responds. This is why most people stay poor. They never learn the law of sowing and reaping. They never discipline their thoughts. They never guard the gates of their mind. They allow every whisper of failure, every fear of poverty, every doubt of worthiness to enter and take root. And here is the cruel irony. Poverty feeds itself. A poor man, fearing he will lose what little he has, hoards it, hides it, clings to it. In doing so, he strangles the very flow of prosperity. A rich man, knowing that money is energy, circulates it, invests it, multiplies it. In doing so, he aligns with the eternal law of increase. John D. Rockefeller, who rose from humble beginnings to become one of the wealthiest men in history, once said, "I always tried to turn every disaster into an opportunity." He understood that the external conditions of life bend to the inner command of one's vision. But the poor man, when faced with disaster, crumbles, curses his luck, and retreats into fear. Thus the cycle repeats. Most people stay poor because they worship security more than possibility. They would rather cling to a small paycheck, predictable and safe, than risk everything for the chance at greatness. They mistake the prison cell for a shelter. They confuse comfort with freedom. But history has proven again and again, those who achieve extraordinary success are those who dared to step into uncertainty, who risked failure, who embraced the unknown with courage. Consider Walt Disney. He was fired from a newspaper job because he was told he lacked imagination. His first studio went bankrupt. He mortgaged everything to build Disneyland, and people laughed at him, calling it Disney's folly. But Disney refused to surrender his dream. He saw a vision in his mind so vividly that it burned brighter than the laughter of critics. Today, his vision has touched every corner of the globe. Meanwhile, how many men and women laughed at him, mocked him, dismissed him, and today their names are forgotten, buried in the dust of mediocrity? The poor cling to excuses. The rich cling to vision. The poor say, "I'll believe it when I see it." The rich know, "I'll see it when I believe it." The poor look at circumstances and surrender. The rich look within themselves and command circumstances to change. Most people stay poor because they believe wealth is external. Something to chase, to beg for, to steal, to be granted by others. But wealth is first internal, a state of mind, a vibration of confidence, faith, and expectancy. It cannot be begged for. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be inherited if the mind is unprepared. How many heirs of great fortunes have squandered everything in a few years because their minds were still poor? How many lottery winners returned to poverty within 5 years because they never learned the inner science of wealth? This is the truth that the masses cannot face. Money will not make a poor mind rich. It will only magnify what is already within. Earl Nightingale once said, "We become what we think about." Yet most people think about their bills, their debts, their fears, their insecurities. They feed their minds with scarcity from morning until night. They consume news of crisis, gossip of failure, whispers of limitation. They let fear dictate their thoughts, and then they wonder why their lives are filled with lack. The wealthy, on the other hand, guard their thoughts as a king guards his throne. They read books that expand their vision. They study the lives of those who conquered the impossible. They discipline their minds as an athlete disciplines his body. They refuse to entertain doubt because they know every thought is a seed, and every seed eventually bears fruit. Most people stay poor because they will not pay the price of discipline. They crave riches, but they avoid responsibility. They desire success, but they despise effort. They want the crown, but they refuse the thorns. They live by impulse instead of principle, by emotion instead of reason, by reaction instead of intention. But wealth demands a price, not always in money, but in sacrifice, in focus, in discipline, in perseverance. Andrew Carnegie demanded, "Devote 20 years of your life to studying the philosophy of success, and you will uncover the secret." Most people would not give 20 days to study success. They would rather complain, blame, and envy. That is why they remain where they are. and yet the door is never locked. The path is never hidden. The key lies in the mastery of thought, in the clarity of vision, in the courage to act. Poverty may be the condition of the majority, but it is not destiny. It is a choice made daily, whether consciously or unconsciously, by the seeds we plant in the soil of our minds. Why do most people stay poor? Because they live as slaves to their fears. Fear of failure, fear of ridicule, fear of loss, fear of stepping outside the lines society has drawn for them. Fear is the silent warden of their prison, the invisible chain that binds their wrists. They imagine fear as protection, yet it is the very poison that drains their strength. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be." The same is true of wealth. Most folks are as prosperous as they make up their minds to be. But the masses never make up their minds. They wait for someone else to decide their fate. A government, a boss, a parent, a stroke of luck. They wait for the stars to align, for opportunity to knock politely at their door. They wait. And while they wait, life slips through their fingers like sand. The wealthy do not wait. They do not stand idle, hoping fortune will stumble into their path. They create fortune. They seek opportunity. And when they cannot find it, they invent it. Alexander Graham Bell did not wait for the telephone to appear in someone else's laboratory. Nikola Tesla did not wait for the secrets of electricity to be handed down by chance. They pursued their visions with obsession, with a faith so fiery that the impossible became inevitable. Most people stay poor because they treat their dreams as fragile wishes, not commands to destiny. They whisper their desires as though ashamed of them, rather than declaring them as sovereign laws of their existence. They wish for riches, but prepare for poverty. They say, "One day I'll be successful," but live every day as if success is a stranger. And so poverty remains their companion. Look closely, and you will see the pattern. Poverty is not an accident. It is a habit. The poor spend money before they earn it, then wonder why they remain trapped in debt. The poor waste hours on distractions, then wonder why they never achieve their goals. The poor criticize the successful, then wonder why success avoids them. Poverty is the harvest of daily choices, of repeated thoughts, of unchallenged habits. Meanwhile, the wealthy cultivate habits of wealth long before the money arrives. They rise early while the world still sleeps. They feed their minds with ideas instead of idle chatter. They invest in themselves, in knowledge, in skills, in networks. They set aside envy and instead study the successful to learn their secrets. They plant seeds of discipline, focus, and resilience. And in time, those seeds bloom into fortune. James Allen wrote, "Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound." This single sentence explains why most people stay poor. They dream of better circumstances, but refuse to become better men and women. They want to change the world outside, while leaving the world within untouched. But the inner world always precedes the outer. A man cannot rise higher than the vision he holds of himself. If he sees himself as a victim, he will find ways to be victimized. If he sees himself as unworthy, he will repel opportunity even when it stands before him. But if he sees himself as powerful, capable, destined for greatness, then the universe itself bends to match that vision. Consider Winston Churchill. During the darkest days of World War II, when bombs rained over London, when defeat seemed inevitable, Churchill did not see himself as beaten. He declared, "We shall never surrender." His vision of victory was unshakable, and it became the rallying cry that turned despair into triumph. Most people stay poor because they surrender too soon. They encounter one failure, one rejection, one obstacle, and they retreat. They take failure as final, not realizing that failure is only feedback, only the hammer shaping the steel of character. They hide from rejection, not realizing that every rejection brings them one step closer to the opportunity that will change their lives. Thomas Edison tried thousands of times before he perfected the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That is the difference between the wealthy and the poor. The poor see failure as a tombstone. The wealthy see it as a stepping stone. Another truth? Most people stay poor because they despise learning once they leave school. They believe education ends with a diploma. But the wealthy know education is a lifelong pursuit. Rockefeller read voraciously. Carnegie studied philosophy. Benjamin Franklin, though self-taught, dedicated hours every day to reading, writing, and experimenting. These men built empires because they built their minds first. Contrast this with the poor man who spends his evenings numbing himself with distractions, wasting time on gossip, entertainment, or complaints. His mind, left uncultivated, withers. He drifts, while the rich man sharpens his mind like a sword. And in the battles of life, the sharp sword always prevails. But perhaps the greatest reason most people stay poor is that they never define what they truly want. They drift like ships without a compass, blown by the winds of circumstance. One day they desire riches, the next they are satisfied with survival. One day they dream of freedom, the next they cling to security. Without definite purpose, without a burning desire, their energy is scattered, their focus diluted. This truth got discovered when I interviewed the most powerful men of his era. Every single one of them, from Carnegie to Ford to Edison, possessed a definite major purpose, a central vision that consumed them. They knew what they wanted, and they directed every thought, every action, every resource toward that goal. Meanwhile, the majority of people never define their purpose. They wake up each day asking, "What must I do to survive?" instead of, "What can I do to achieve greatness?" They live reactive lives, always responding to the demands of others, never taking command of their own destiny. And destiny, like a wild horse, can only be mastered by those who seize the reins. Helen Keller, though blind and deaf, declared, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision." And indeed, most people have perfect sight, yet no vision. They can see the road in front of them, but not the horizon of their lives. And without vision, they remain trapped in circles of poverty, repeating the same year over and over until death claims them. The truth is sharp, but it must be spoken. Most people stay poor because they choose the path of least resistance. They drift with the current instead of swimming against it. They choose comfort today at the expense of abundance tomorrow. They trade long-term prosperity for short-term ease. And life, being merciless, rewards them with exactly what they chose: temporary comfort, eternal lack. But for those who awaken, who decide to take control, the path is clear. It begins with thought, with belief, with vision, with discipline, with the daily decision to plant seeds of abundance in the soil of the mind. From those seeds grows the tree of wealth, unshakable, inevitable, bearing fruit in due season. We must face the truth head on. Most people stay poor because they refuse the discipline of mastery. They crave comfort more than greatness. And in doing so, they sell their birthright for a cheap illusion of ease. They drift through life, mistaking activity for achievement, mistaking effort for progress, mistaking survival for living. But wealth, true wealth, is not handed to the drifter. It is reserved for the disciplined, the focused, the unyielding. Discipline is the bridge between vision and reality. Without it, the grandest dream remains an idle fantasy. Look at Henry Ford. He envisioned a car for the common man, affordable and reliable, but vision alone did not put wheels on the road. Discipline did. The relentless discipline to refine the assembly line, to streamline production, to endure criticism and setbacks. Millions scoffed at his dream, but his discipline turned vision into history. Now compare this with the poor man who dreams but never acts, who plans but never follows through. He speaks of his ambitions endlessly, yet his hands remain idle, his habits unchanged. His life becomes a graveyard of abandoned dreams, each one buried under excuses. Most people stay poor because they mistake wishing for willing. A wish is a fleeting spark, gone as quickly as it arrives, but a will is fire, enduring, consuming obstacles, bending reality to its demand. The poor man wishes for riches. The rich man wills himself into riches. One whispers to the universe, the other commands it. And here lies another truth. Wealth is not built in the extraordinary moments. It is built in the ordinary hours, in the unseen habits repeated day after day. Andrew Carnegie did not stumble upon fortune by accident. He built it brick by brick with discipline, with patience, with unwavering focus. He understood the law of accumulation, that small, consistent efforts compound into staggering results. But the poor man resists this law. He seeks shortcuts, quick wins, instant gratification. He gambles, hoping for luck to rescue him from his own neglect. He avoids discipline because it is uncomfortable. But what he fails to see is that discomfort is the price of greatness. Most people stay poor because they reject discomfort. They want growth without struggle, harvest without planting, success without sacrifice. But nature reveals the truth. The seed must break before the tree can rise. The caterpillar must endure the cocoon before the butterfly emerges. The athlete must strain his muscles before strength is born. And man must embrace discomfort before wealth can flow into his life. Consider the life of Abraham Lincoln. He lost elections, businesses, and loved ones. He was born into poverty, endured ridicule, faced relentless defeat. Yet he refused to surrender. His discomfort forged a resilience that carried him to the presidency, where he would alter the course of a nation. Poverty could not hold him because he refused to bow to it. Meanwhile, how many men of his time, born with equal or greater advantages, vanished into obscurity because they could not bear discomfort? Most people stay poor because they misjudge time. They waste it on trivialities as if they were immortal. They live as though tomorrow is guaranteed, as though opportunity will wait for them. They fail to understand that time is the raw material of life, more precious than gold, more irreplaceable than diamonds. Benjamin Franklin, though not born to wealth, became one of the most accomplished men in history because he valued time above all. "Dost thou love life?" he asked. "Then do not squander time, for that's the stuff life is made of." He rose before dawn, scheduled his days with precision, devoted hours to learning, creating, building. He treated each day as sacred, and life rewarded him accordingly. But the poor man treats time as cheap. He trades it for distraction, for gossip, for idleness. He spends hours complaining but not a moment creating. He lives in reaction instead of intention, letting circumstances dictate his days. And as time slips through his fingers, so does opportunity. Most people stay poor because they fear wealth itself. Strange though it seems, many secretly believe money is evil, that riches corrupt, that prosperity is reserved for the ruthless. These beliefs, planted deep in childhood, poison their relationship with abundance. They sabotage their own success, rejecting opportunities, avoiding risks, staying small, because deep inside they fear what wealth might mean. But money is not evil. Money is neutral, a servant, a mirror. In the hands of the wise, it builds hospitals, funds education, feeds the hungry, advances civilization. In the hands of the foolish, it becomes a weapon of destruction. The problem is not money. It is the mind that wields it. To fear money is to fear one's own potential. Joseph Murphy wrote that the subconscious mind accepts whatever beliefs are impressed upon it, whether true or false. If you believe money is dangerous, your subconscious will repel it to protect you. If you believe wealth is noble, your subconscious will attract it as naturally as iron to a magnet. The poor repel wealth without knowing it, while the wealthy attract it without effort. And so, we return to the foundation. Belief. Most people stay poor because they believe in poverty more strongly than they believe in prosperity. They have faith in lack, faith in struggle, faith in limitation. And faith, whether placed in abundance or poverty, always delivers. Wallace D. Wattles, in The Science of Getting Rich, declared, "You must get rid of the last vestige of the old idea that there is a deity whose will it is that you should be poor. Poverty is not divine destiny. It is man-made, thought-made, habit-made. The universe itself is abundant beyond comprehension. Look at the stars, countless and infinite. Look at the oceans, vast and overflowing. Look at the forests, teeming with life. Scarcity is the lie. Abundance is the truth. Yet most people align themselves with the lie, and thus they live it. The truth is undeniable. Wealth is not reserved for the few. It is available to anyone who masters the laws of the mind, who aligns their vision with faith, who disciplines their actions, who refuses to bow to fear. Poverty, too, is available to anyone who neglects these laws. Every man and woman stands daily at the crossroads. One path leads to poverty, the other to riches. The decision is not made once, but every hour, every thought, every choice. And yet most people, through ignorance, through fear, through indifference, choose poverty by default. But those who awaken, who dare, who believe, those are the ones who seize the path of abundance. Those are the ones whose names are remembered, whose legacies endure, whose wealth multiplies not only in money, but in influence, in contribution, in the elevation of humanity. And so we arrive at the final and most piercing truth. Most people stay poor because they refuse to take full responsibility for their lives. They point fingers at outward, at the economy, at their upbringing, at their bosses, at politics, at fate itself. Yet never once do they turn the finger inward. They do not see that the architect of their reality is not circumstance, but themselves. Responsibility is power. The moment you accept that every thought you entertain, every action you take, every belief you hold has shaped your present reality, you awaken to the truth that you can also shape your future. But most reject this truth because it is heavy, because it demands accountability. They would rather remain blameless victims of life than become captains of their fate. And so they trade power for pity, control for comfort, destiny for despair. Andrew Carnegie once said that the greatest discovery of his life was that a man could build himself into whatever he chooses. That discovery is available to all, but few will ever act on it. For acting on it requires courage, courage to face the truth of your own weakness, courage to dismantle the lies you've told yourself, courage to abandon the excuses that have kept you safe in mediocrity. Most people stay poor because they worship their excuses as idols. They kneel before the altar of I can't, I don't have time, it's too late for me, I wasn't born into wealth, I don't know the right people. And as long as they bow to those false gods, they will remain enslaved to them. But the wealthy, the powerful, the great, what do they worship? They worship possibility. They kneel before vision. They give their loyalty to perseverance, to discipline, to faith. They know that every excuse is nothing but a chain waiting to be broken. Think of Edison. working through thousands of failed experiments by candlelight. Think of Lincoln rising from one defeat after another until he stood tall as president. Think of Churchill, who faced the annihilation of his nation yet refused to surrender. Their lives were not devoid of obstacles. On the contrary, they were filled with them, but they refused excuses, and in that refusal, they rose to greatness. The poor man asks, "What will the world give me?" The rich man asks, "What can I give to the world?" And in giving, he receives in tenfold measure. Most people stay poor because they do not understand the law of contribution. They clutch greedily at what little they have, believing wealth comes from taking, but wealth is born from giving. The marketplace rewards those who solve problems, who create value, who lift others. Rockefeller did not become rich by keeping oil for himself, but by distributing it to the world. Ford did not hoard his inventions, but shared them in every city and every household. Walt Disney did not lock away his imagination, but offered it to millions. Yet the poor man clings tightly, refusing to give, refusing to risk, refusing to trust the law of increase, and in his tight grip, his hands remain empty. Gratitude is another law ignored by the poor. They curse their misfortune, envy their neighbors, resent the wealthy. They focus on what they lack, and thus attract more lack. The wealthy, however, cultivate gratitude like a sacred ritual. They give thanks for what they have, no matter how little, and in doing so, they multiply it. Gratitude aligns the mind with abundance, and abundance rushes to meet it. Most people stay poor because they are blind to the invisible laws that govern life. Just as gravity pulls without fail, the laws of thought, belief, gratitude, discipline, and vision pull without fail. They are constant, impartial, available to all. They do not favor the rich over the poor, the educated over the uneducated, the powerful over the humble. They only favor those who obey them. Joseph Murphy said, "Your subconscious mind is like a ship's captain. Give it the right orders, and it will carry you safely to your destination. But give it no orders, and it will drift into storms." Most people give no orders, or worse, they give destructive orders. I can't afford this. I'll never succeed. I was born unlucky. Life is against me. And their subconscious, loyal servant that it is, delivers exactly what they command. This, my friend, is why most people stay poor. Not because the world is unfair, not because opportunity is absent, not because fate is cruel. They stay poor because they live as prisoners of their own thoughts, slaves to fear, worshipers of excuses, blind to laws that never fail. But you who hear these words, are faced with a choice. Will you continue to live as the masses do, trapped in chains you refuse to break? Or will you rise, awaken, take command of your mind, and declare poverty a stranger to your destiny? The decision is yours. It has always been yours. It always will be yours. You must choose to think differently, to believe differently, to act differently. You must choose discipline over indulgence, vision over drift, gratitude over envy, courage over fear. You must choose to plant seeds of abundance and tend to them daily until your harvest overflows. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for luck. Do not wait for someone to hand you the key. The key has been in your hand since the day you were born. Turn it. Unlock the door. Step out of the prison that has held humanity in chains for centuries. Look at the lives of those who came before. Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Disney, Keller, Churchill, Nightingale, Wattles, Allen Bell, Chaplin. They were not superhuman. They were men and women who chose to believe, to discipline, to persist, to give, to create. They obeyed the laws of success, and the universe rewarded them. Now it is your turn. Most people will stay poor, but you do not have to. Poverty is common, but it is not destiny. Abundance is rare, but it is possible, if you will claim it, if you will live it, if you will dare to demand it of life. Rise above the excuses. Silence the voices of fear. Break the chains of limitation. Align your mind with abundance, your heart with gratitude, your will with discipline. Step boldly into the current of success and let it carry you to the life you were meant to live. This is the truth about why most people stay poor, and this is the truth that can set you free. You must keep in mind the following. Repetition is the sculptor of your destiny. You will not become what you visualize once. You will become what you visualize consistently, daily, obsessively, until your brain starts adjusting your behaviors, your standards, your environment to match that inner self-image. That's not magic. That's biology. So listen this lesson again and again and again until it gets installed in your brain and in your subconscious mind, until you realize the results you seek.
This is timeless and powerful wisdom that has influenced and improved the life of millions. Now you must install it deep into your subconscious mind to experience real-life changes. Find in our channel's description the resources that will aid you in achieving the optimum results you seek.